Told us about your book, The Anarchy, 2019, and you told us this fascinating story of how one of the world's biggest empires, the Mughal Empire, disintegrated and was replaced by this private company, the British East India Company. Now, Sri Lanka today has a the largest, in fact, Chinese state-owned enterprise managing Hambantota port. Some people dub that as a Chinese death trap, or not. Palitha will, I'm sure, come up with a view. While Adani is also managing a container terminal in the west terminal of Colombo port. Now, how should Sri Lanka react to possible slash and burn capitalism from India and then possibly China? Are there any lessons of history?
If you go to the National Museum around the corner and go into the coin room, you'll see from about 100 BC on that there were three major powers competing for the affection of Sri Lanka at the time. One was the Romans, at a time when historians now think 1/3 of the entire Roman budget to pay for all the government and army from the Rhine to Algeria, 1/3 of that came from the customs take on the Red Sea ports of the trade coming in from India, from Arabia, up the Red Sea. So this was the very, very rich trading zone. And Sri Lanka, in the early centuries, was beautifully poised to exploit that. And it was competed over by the Romans, and later the Byzantines, and the Persians, who were constantly turning up in Sri Lanka and telling the various kings here that the Romans were nothing, that the Persians were the Shah and Shahs, the kings of the world. And there's the account we have that tells this story is by a Greek, a Byzantine Greek who got shipwrecked. And he won the case for the Romans by saying that the quality of the gold in the Roman coinage was better, which proved that this unadulterated gold was proof of the power. But I think what you see then, and also you have the Ethiopians, perhaps surprisingly, as a third major trading power coming out of Aksum and trading with Sri Lanka. And what that classical period shows is that in the age before colonialism, this is a very, very rich part of the world, and that trade coming from China, heading to the west, has to pass through either Sri Lanka or India. And the ability to act as a port and stopping port between these two bodes very well, I think, for the future of Sri Lanka, which is why the Chinese are investing, which is why Adani is investing. So I think there's every reason to hope that if Sri Lanka plays its cards well, as indeed with India, that this is a very promising economic moment, and that the rise of China, which is often billed as a threat to India and a threat to various other places, is potentially a major asset. For much of world history, 40% of the world's GDP has been produced by China and its satellites. 40% of the world's GDP has been produced by South Asia. And it's just this blip of colonialism which follows Vasco da Gama, which leads to 400 years when suddenly that GDP bucket goes straight down to the ground. You can see the graph sink. And what you've seen since 1947 in this whole region is just a gradual return to the norm. And I think I'm very optimistic, not just for India, but for Sri Lanka and the region. I think that we're entering a time when this is going to be the richest corner of the world.
Thank you very much. We'd like